It seems like for these types, they repress their own sexuality so much to the point where instead of being able to engage with it honestly and without fear of any kind of societal pushback or retribution, they've wrapped it up in the neat little bow of being a so-called trad wife. They've essentially, because they either don't know how to, or they know that if they do, they'll be shunned by the same people whose politics they share, i.e. conservative religious people, for the moral depravity that is their kind of arrangement in a relationship that they describe, they instead project that outward, that repression outward into their politics, which is a fundamentally mentally unhealthy way to rationalize your own self-identity, your own sense of self, and it's not good, generally speaking, for the broader society. Like, if you want to be a hyper-sub, sex object, baby factory for your partner, go for it. If you're both into that, I don't give a goddamn. But like, why is it part of your politics to try to force that on everyone else? We're vibing, bro. Look at this, man. I think the color for the legwear, not as good as I was hoping. But I am cooking, bro. Do you see this turtleneck? That's crazy. You see the subtle perspective on the emblem on the cross here? Because it's on her breasts. Now, that said, this breast shape is fucked up. I fucked that up, and I'm not fixing it. I can acknowledge that it's fucked up. Anyway, I'm going to change the legwear color. But I could just paint bucket that shit, so we're chilling. You're trying too hard on this? That's what you think. I don't think I'm trying hard enough. I should have whipped out the tablet for this one. You've been at this for so long, I forgot what this is for. I'm giving some modesty to this thought, is what I'm doing. We're doing the Lord's work. Alright! We've done it. Feeling pretty good about this one. Here, we could do like some of these. And then, like, we could have this be gold pieces that she's throwing down to the chickens. Which means we should make this, like, look like a bunch of gold, I guess. Which, at this point, I mean, we might as well outline the rim of the bowl so it's a bit more cohesive. Alright, I think we've done it. There's a duck here! Important edits have needing to be made here. There we go. See? Special warning? Ducks should not be smoking cigars. I don't know if you didn't know this, but now you do. All right. Now, the shadow of her grieving husband. Or something. The one who watches. The fuck am I doing, man? Oh, man. Anyway, what better time to start the segment than now? If you're wondering why it is I've decided to make this fine young lady more modest instead of the thoughterry we were seeing before, it's because I don't know if YouTube is going to have a problem with me showing you the unedited photo. I've had to censor it because of 1984 George Orwell's Animal Crossing. It was originally a woman who is scantily clad. She was wearing lingerie and feeding the fowl at this beaten down farm, it would seem. This person posted this. When I say I want to be a trad wife, this is what I mean, see? But like with lingerie lady doing it. And a lot of people are clowning on her because it's funny. Like, you're in an area that's ostensibly more conservative. In that, like, you make fun of, and this account does, makes fun of women who have OnlyFans, who, like, take agency over their own selves and produce that kind of content to pay their bills more often than not. It's not often people get into that line of work, unfortunately, because they want to, but rather because they find it to be a less exploitative way to make money than working a more standard job would be, where they may sell their bodies in the form of digital photographs and videos to people online, rather than selling their body to whatever nameless, faceless corporate entity that they happen to be working for, where they end up having to work long hours for less wages, in terrible working conditions, barely able to make enough money to put food on the table and keep the lights on. You know? They'd rather not do that shit. That's why everybody wants to sell t-shirts. That's why everybody wants to be a content creator. That's why I became a content creator is because I had been in the workforce for the greater part of a decade in food service, and I was just tired of it. And my primary motivator at the time was like, maybe I can make enough money on the side to cut some hours off of my work week, and then maybe I can use that extra time to cut more hours off my work week if I put more time into making money online to not have to, and so on and so forth. Now, in an ideal world, you wouldn't have to make such decisions, and only people that would be making such lewd content would be people that want to, because it's genuinely a thing they want to do. Not because they feel, forced into doing it, because the alternative is being forced into selling their body for their labor in terms of being a food service worker or whatever to some corporate entity. It's just, there's more agency to it. Plus, if you think you're hot, you can, play off that and whatnot. There's a lot of negatives that come along with it too. And I thought this was really funny. Reason being that this account, it's hard for me to tell if they're a joke account or not. I'm leaning on the side of they aren't, but I don't actually know. But it's not super relevant to the issue. The broader issue at hand here that I find really interesting is this idea of the so-called trad wife movement in the conservative side of our political ecosystem, where, you'll have somebody who is ostensibly pro-conservative values posting a picture of a scantily clad woman in lingerie who is essentially stating that to her, to be a trad wife would be to essentially be a sex object for their husband, and in most cases be completely servile to and submissive to the man in this situation, because it's so infrequently that these sort of conservative trans wife types are, lesbians. That is antithetical to their usual religious worldview. And because of that, I've had to go through great pains to give this woman a bit more modesty, while still allowing her to look really good in MS Paint for far too long before the segment even started. And if you watched my Twitch stream, which happens like a couple times a month at this point, you were here for the creation of this. You got to see my thought process of, I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was pretty fun. I think the outfit's good too. Like the shoulderless, tight turtleneck sweatshirt with the high-waisted, baggy leg wear. I think it's pretty good. Anyway, she responded to it, it would seem. Said, apparently my old tweet has stirred up rage because, the trad movement is just a fetish, quote unquote. Let's entertain that for a moment. Why is romanticizing lifelong commitment and raising a big family such a crime? Oh no, people want to love and multiply. How dare they? You're avoiding the actual claim being made against you in this argument, which, I guess I wouldn't expect much from somebody with the chromosomes that I don't have, because there's a biological disposition to them not being logical and being more emotional. This is not the claim being made against you. It's fine if you want to romanticize a lifelong commitment and raising a big family, and that's like the kind of lifestyle you want. It's just that to illustrate that, you've posted an image of a woman in lingerie, so a woman wearing an outfit that is incredibly inefficient for the job that's being done, which is tending to the poultry, to the fowl in this instance, on what looks like a farm in the middle of nowhere. And it seems like that inclination for you to do that is born out of a sexual interest. Now, there's an inherent sexual interest to the conversation of being a trad wife in this case, because she's literally laying it out to you what she thinks being a trad wife is, which is raising a big family. Using the word multiply to refer to creating new humans is a bit odd. Like, obviously, it's technically correct, but I don't know that most people would use that kind of language. It's kind of weird. It seems like you kind of are reducing yourself down in your definition of what a trad wife is to being a fetish object for your husband. Which is fine if that's what you want to do. I'm not yucking anybody's yum here. If you want to be a turbo-submissive person to your partner, it's a free country. Do what you will. The problem is that these types of people will often call out others for being sluts or thoughts or whatever if they don't happen to be conservative, right-wing, oftentimes religious, and oftentimes Christian people that are making such a claim. And that's interesting to me. Because, you will not find any shortage of people on the left, specifically the bottoms among us, that would be into this kind of arrangement where you're completely submissive and servile to your partner, who is the dominant in this instance, and they are the breadwinner. They do all the work, so you can stay home, be hot, and then be available for them whenever for a release of sexual pleasure for both of you. Right? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people on the left that are into that. It's just that they're open about it and they understand themselves to be into that to such an extent and are comfortable enough and confident enough with it that they don't feel the need to dress it up in this kind of psychosexual politics that the so-called conservative trad wife movement and the types that talk about it tend to, right? Like, it seems like these people just have like a hyper submissive fetish. They want to be a hyper sub to a dominant partner. And because that idea is inherently like, I don't want to say depraved, but it's a bit out there in terms of like the norm. It's certainly not the norm in terms of like how submissive these people tend to be. Like, they're for the disenfranchisement. I don't know if this person is specifically, but a lot of the types that would post like this are for the disenfranchisement of women from their right to vote. Right? Like, they are willing to degrade themselves because it's a degradation or humiliation fetish as well. Usually, like, reducing yourself down to an object isn't always, but often does entail degradation and being degraded from the previous point of view, being like a human being with your own free will and your own interests and whatnot, to being simply like a hole to be filled by your partner, right? Like, it's not always the case, but they often overlap. And that, I don't think, is the norm. The norm for most people is like, yeah, we expect all relationships first and foremost to be heterosexual, because that's, demographically speaking, that's the general arrangement. So, like, that's the first default to go to that people are going to go to. And then you're going to expect it to be a cisgender man and a cisgender woman. And then you're going to expect that they're probably going to start a family, which means that the bird and the bee, they meet and somehow Babby is formed, right? And the assumption for a long time has been that men would be the breadwinners, they would go to work, and then women would be staying at home, tending to the house and the kids and whatnot. And it's often described in such a way that gives a lot of agency to the man in this instance and makes them, in that case, the dominant fixture in that arrangement, in that relationship, and then therefore makes the woman the submissive. That's the general expectation that's been normalized for a variety of reasons. And, like, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you're wanting to do and you're consenting with the knowledge of everything that involves to that arrangement, go for it. I don't give a shit. But the problem is a lot of these types want to force that on everybody else. They're often against, like, gay marriages, you know, MLM or WLW. They're often against people who don't want to get married and have kids, or, like, people who are in marriages but don't want to have kids. Usually it's like we want to use the power of the state to force you to breed children in a heterosexual relationship, which is very odd. I don't know why well, I guess I do know why. And the broader point I'm trying to get at, and why, you know, I found it funny to do this and be able to show you the full tweet because with this censorship, is because it seems like for these types, they repress their own sexuality so much to the point where instead of being able to engage with it honestly and without fear of any kind of societal pushback or retribution, they've wrapped it up in the neat little bow of being a so-called trad wife. They've essentially, because they either don't know how to, or they know that if they do, they'll be shunned by the same people whose politics they share, i.e. conservative religious people, for the moral depravity that is their kind of arrangement in a relationship that they describe. They instead project that outward, that repression outward, into their politics, which is a fundamentally, like, mentally unhealthy way to rationalize your own self-identity, your own sense of self. And it's not good, generally speaking, for the broader society. It's not good. Like, if you want to be a hyper sub sex object baby factory for your partner, go for it. If you're both into that, I don't give a goddamn. But, like, why is it part of your politics to try to force that on everyone else? Just be into the fetish. Just be a super hyper sub and be happy with it. And, like, understand that that's what you enjoy, and understand that you want to be in a relationship with another person who would be able to fulfill the opposite end of that role for you. And just don't project it out onto your politics, man. It's weird. It's not good for you. It's not good for everybody else in society. And it's certainly not going to be good for the dominant in that arrangement either, because, like, you're not being truthful with yourself. So you're not going to be as good of a fleshlight for your partner as you want to be. And that I cannot abide, all right? You got to be more efficient. Anyway, I think I knocked it out of the park with this censorship, by the way. They say all censorship is bad. I beg to differ, okay? In my view, clothing makes people more attractive. Like, if I see a woman in lingerie, like in a Playboy mag or like a Victoria's Secret poster or whatever, it's like they're attractive, sure, whatever. But, like, I don't know. More clothes is almost always better for me. Mostly because, like, clothing is literally made to accent various parts of the body and make it look better. Like, that's a lot of high-waisted stuff helps with that. There's a whole bunch of ways that the aesthetics of clothing you wear change the aesthetics of your physical form, and it can enhance and minimize certain things, etc., etc. Like, a fully naked woman in front of me is, like, sure, it's, like, attractive in the sense that, like, she's nude, and the implication here is that there might be, like, a sexual engagement happening, and then that could be poggers as well, I guess. But, like, the lingerie that this woman was wearing, for one, is, like, very hyper boomer coded, which I cannot abide. Like, there's better scantily clad, skimpy, be outfits you can wear, and people are like delving into those. Funnily enough, a lot of OnlyFans models, workers will often be delving into that as well. I just find that clothing is an enhancement, and its removal is fine, but like I prefer the clothing. Anyway, so I think I've made her, frankly, more attractive by censoring, is what I mean to say, which is also to show you that George Orwell was full of shit. Was there more to this? The person that posted it's so like I said, it's hard for me to tell if this person is like satirizing the person that they're purporting to be, or if like this is actually a belief that they have. I think it is. Like they have a lot of funny tweets in that they're funny because they're trying to be jokes. I wouldn't say like I would find them like actually funny. Like I would only exhale out of my nose with a little bit more force than I might otherwise. But like this is like somewhat humorous. Only thing worse than a girl with an OnlyFans is a man with an OnlyFans. Go work in a mine or something. But you know? Like, the humorous aspect of this is the go work in a mine or something. Because, like, it seems like you're making fun of the kind of person you purport to be. But, like, then you go and look at other things that this account has posted, and either they're, like, really good at the satire, which, you know, respect, if so, or, like, this is actually their beliefs. Because there's this person here who has this graph. I can't verify the veracity of this data, okay? They say, why do all the alt-right, pro-natalist influencers talk about increased genetic mutations from older women conceiving children, but they don't talk about the fact that sperm contribute far more of the mutations and have a much steeper aging curve relative to eggs? So the point being made here, if we just take the veracity of this data as a given, because I'm not going to look at that right now, I don't give a shit enough, is that a lot of the alt-right pro-natalist influencers who are going to care about older women conceiving children having potential increased likelihood for genetic mutation or using it to try to justify their own pedophilia. That's point blank. That's it. That's what they're doing. That's why Sneeko has questions about the age of consent. That's why Matt Walsh was talking about 16-year-olds in the creepy ass way he was. Like, that's the vibe we're going for here. That's why they always talk about like women hitting the wall at a certain point. It's because they're trying to justify their interest in people with qualities that are most often associated with humans who are underage, right? And then the other point being made here that they never target men in this instance. And the primary reason is because they want to target women so they can control them because they're not a big fan of women. And they want to see them as these like baby incubators that are like a necessary evil to the continued proliferation of the human species, rather than like individual human beings with their own agency, you know? Because these motherfuckers hate women. We haven't been able to make men get pregnant yet. But boy, are some people trying. And then she responds, thanks, you seem to dislike the quote alt-right pro-natalists, but you've just handed them another solid argument to support starting families young. Appreciate the assist. So like, I feel like you're protesting a bit too much here. I feel you could disagree with like the broader point being made here without specifically pointing out the fact that it was described by alt-right pro-natalist influencers. Because if you're not the alt-right pro-natalist influencer, then they're not talking about you. Like, even if you hold similar views on this specific thing, maybe, like, you don't hold other views that people of the alt-right would, right? i.e. fascism, interest in limiting people's bodily autonomy, state control, and state-mandated religion, the excising of the out-group from society, often marginalized identities, minority groups, black and brown people, people with disabilities, people who are gender queer, and stuff like that. Like, if you don't subscribe to any of that, but, like, your pet interest for whatever reason is fertility and things related to it, like, they're not talking about you. But now you've made it that they're talking about you because you've taken umbrage with the classification of alt-right pro-natalist, right? So, like, it seems like if they are having a political lean, it was already right-wing, it was already conservative. They're into crypto, apparently, which is like a dead giveaway. Because if you're into crypto, you're either on the right or stupid. Those are the two options. I guess there's a hidden third option of, like, being some of the people that got in on the ground floor who were, like, mining Bitcoin in their mother's basement and got lucky off of Bitcoin popping off, and now you have $1 billion and you don't know what to do with it, so you spend your money on buying politicians to push your incel agenda, and then you get J.D. Vance nominated to be the Republican vice presidential candidate, and he ends up having the worst approval ratings of any vice presidential candidate in contemporary history. Anyway, I digress. It seems like you might be protesting a bit too much, is all I mean to say. So, like, if you're asking, like, oh, well, how do you know about their political beliefs? Like, here you go. There's not really much of a reason to care about this tweet, because it's specifically talking about alt-right pro-natalist influencers. Like, you could, if you wanted to take issue with this, you would be like, oh, well, what's so alt-right about XYZ? Like, here's a variety of things that people that I disagree with the alt-right, and this is what differentiates me. This is just a pet interest that I have of mine. Just because there's some similarities doesn't mean it's this. Like, you could defend yourself in that way from that categorization, but, like, you've not done that. So you're kind of defending the alt-right in this instance. You know? Also, who the fuck cares what this person has to say given their own worldview? They're responding to a man. Go back to feeding the chickens. You know, go back to feeding the chickens dressed up as that one bitch from Hunter x Hunter with the vacuum, which I just realized is kind of what the outfit I put on her looks like, except she would have black hair and glasses and not be white. It's very interesting. I find it funny. You know, the conservative sexual repression produces a lot of negative outcomes, but it also produces funny negative outcomes in certain contexts. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt, I guess. Also, don't worry about this guy, okay? He's not up to anything.